Even though you are not thriving and fulfilled in your career, you're good at your job. You're genuinely good at it. You make good money, you have the title, maybe people even respect you, and on paper, your career looks like you're a success and everything is going well. And that is exactly why you feel like you can't leave that job that you don't enjoy. Because first, you are likely bound by the golden handcuffs where you're unhappy, but the perceived benefits of your job right now are louder than the unhappiness, and it is keeping you in a job that you don't want to be in. Not to mention the fear of going backward in your career if you make a pivot, the fear of taking a pay cut, the fear that if you leave this job that you're good at to do something else, you will lose everything that you have built to get here, whether it is connections, status, relationships, money, all of it. And as somebody who has made 3 career pivots over the past 12 years, I totally understand all of that. The fear of starting over, wondering if the new thing will work out, or if you are jeopardizing your success and stability by making a career pivot. Yet and still, each time I made a career pivot, I thrived financially, emotionally, physically, and even surprisingly spiritually. So in this video, I am sharing the 3 biggest lessons that I have learned from making 3 career pivots over the past 12 years. These are the lessons that I honestly wish somebody had told me every single time where I was sitting on that precipice of, should I stay or should I go? And it would have saved me so much time and mindset drama on this, honestly, in a lot of situations. And my hope is that if you have been in a job that you don't enjoy for years now and have been wrestling with whether to stay or go or what your next step should be, that this video will at least get you started on making a decision, whether that is stay or go. Even though selfishly, if you're unhappy, I always want you to leave your miserable job, because I believe that every woman deserves to be in a career that fulfills her, where she can thrive. Let's get into it. If you are new here, hi, and if you are a regular viewer, welcome back. I am Dr. Tega. I'm a career coach who helps professional women leave draining, soul-sucking jobs that they don't enjoy and pivot into more fulfilling careers that they can thrive in by coaching them to get super clear on who they are, what they want, and to job search without burning out. Let's get into today's video. So when I think about my own career journey, I have made 3 major career pivots over the past 12 years. I think of it really, if I look at in total, all of it, 5 pivots total. So my journey was, I worked as a healthcare data entry person, and then I pivoted into counseling, specifically school counseling. And so then I think within school counseling, I made some minor pivots where I worked as a school counselor, then I worked as a mental health counselor, and then a career counselor. And then I made another major pivot from counseling to being a professor. And right now I am currently in the midst of my most recent pivot, where I'm pivoting from being a professor to a business owner. And I have definitely learned a ton of lessons throughout the past 12 years, lessons that I have shared in multiple videos and I use to coach my clients. However, when it comes to pivoting specifically, meaning going just in a whole new direction in your career, I totally understand how that can feel really scary and like a big deal, especially if you've never done it before. And so there are 3 really major lessons that I want to share with you from each of, so one from each of my 3 big pivots, that I hope will help you on this journey towards deciding if you want to pursue a more fulfilling career or not. So my first major job, which was towards the end of college, was I was working as a healthcare data entry or in a healthcare data entry role. I was working in a lung cancer patient center, and I was entering lung cancer research data into a computer. When I tell you that I was miserable, I was miserable. I worked in a tiny cubicle office. It was like I would walk into the office and then just turn and sit down, and I had like this L desk computer. Like that was literally like the length of my office space, was walk in, sit right down, computer, entering data day in, day out. And I was so unhappy. And I remember during that period of my life, I would look around at other people around me, and they seemed to have their careers figured out. Like it looked like everybody else seemed to know what they were doing. They seemed to be fulfilled. And I started to wonder genuinely, I was like, is something wrong with me? Why can't I figure out my career or be fulfilled? Why can't I figure out what my next role needs to be? And I even started to wonder, am I as smart as I thought I was? Am I as educated as I thought I was? Because again, I was finishing my bachelor's degree. I just was really confused about why I was so unhappy and what else I could do. But I kept persisting on that medical healthcare path because when I was 12 years old, this is way back in high school, when I was 12 years old, middle school, one or the other. Either way, I remember me and my best friend being like, oh, I'm going to be a pediatrician. And I had told myself that I was going to be a pediatrician. I told family members I was going to be a pediatrician. People thought I was going to be a doctor. Like I held onto that dream so tight, which was part of why I was in this healthcare data entry role, because in my mind it was related. I held on so tightly that I even took the MCAT. I failed the MCAT also. And because this is how I actually ended up in healthcare data entry, because I failed the MCAT, I thought, oh, go do something related for a little bit and then come back and figure out medicine. Like I was really holding on, trying to be loyal to this vision that I had painted for myself when I was 12. And when I look back now, it's really honestly quite ridiculous because I majored in biology in college. I did not get an A in any of my science classes. Biology, I hated chemistry. Biology, chemistry, physics, I got an A in because, let's be honest, I used to see like exam questions beforehand, but I did not get A in any of my classes. It wasn't until I minored in psychology that I really started thriving in college, where I loved psychology. I loved what I was learning, but with all those signs in front of me, I still thought that I had to be a doctor because I had said I was going to be a doctor. So I stuck with science classes. I took the MCAT. I failed. I started this healthcare data entry job so that I could be in the medical space for when I took the MCAT again. And it wasn't until I realized that I was really miserable in that healthcare data entry job that I had to pause and ask myself, what exactly is happening here? Like, why am I in this tiny cubicle office, miserable, typing ones and zeros into a computer program that I'm not happy in at all? And I realized that the reason why I was staying on this medical track for so long was because I was trying to be loyal to what 12-year-old me wanted. Like, make it make sense. I was a grown woman building my whole life around a decision the child version of me made. And when I realized that, it was like some chains fell off my brain because I realized I was like, okay, this makes no sense. First of all, God did not create me to be miserable. And if I am miserable every single day of my life, something is wrong. Not to mention, like I said, everybody else seemed to be figuring things out. So why couldn't I figure it out? And I finally decided to stop being loyal to that childhood dream and really think about what I wanted and what I needed to thrive, which is when I took a step back from working altogether. I actually took an adult gap year. I moved back home to Nigeria. I lived with my parents for a year and really had to figure out what I wanted to do with my career. And in that story is the first lesson that I want to share with you, which is, whose dream are you being loyal to right now? So when you think about the fact that you are unhappy in your career, you have been unhappy for years, and yet you have not made a move to make a pivot, you're being loyal to something. And I'm wondering what that is. And I invite you, right? That's the lesson, is to just ask yourself, staying in this job for years and years and years, who am I being loyal to? Are you being loyal to an old version of you? Maybe the version of you that started at this job years ago and you think that you have to stay to prove something to that version of you? Are you trying to be loyal to maybe the company because you think that if you leave, then somehow you are disloyal? Because if you are staying loyal to a dream that an old version of you picked, you are doing the current and future versions of you a massive disservice. You are holding on tightly to this old dream that you're not giving yourself an opportunity to actually thrive in your career and grow in your career. Once you pause and ask yourself that question, I think you might start to see like who's driving the decisions that you're making in your career, and it will open you up to start thinking about what future you need to thrive, to be excited in your career, to feel valued, to feel happy. And making a pivot will not feel as big and stressful because you'll recognize that you have the freedom to choose what direction you take your career in. So back to my story. Once I figured out that I was being loyal to an old version of myself and I took that gap year, I really got clear on who I was, what mattered to me, what was important to me. And this part of my own career story is actually the foundation of the career clarity framework, my visa framework that I use to help my clients figure out what their next career move needs to be. And during that period of my life, I discovered counseling. Back then, I didn't even know counseling was a thing. It wasn't really popular in Nigeria back then as like a field. In fact, it's just now becoming more accepted. So it wasn't like it was a role that was already on my radar. I had to really do research into what kinds of roles make sense based on what I have learned about myself. And that's how I discovered counseling. Now, if you know anything about counseling, you know that counseling is a massive, massive field. Even my story shows you that, from school to mental health to group to career to marriage and family. There's so many ways you can go. So I still even then had to figure out what kind of counseling did I want to do. And back then I loved working with kids. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I really want to work with kids, but I don't want to be a teacher. This is very ironic because then I became a professor later on, but I didn't want to be a teacher. And so school counseling to me was, okay, I get to still be in the schools. I get to support kids and help them grow and develop without actually teaching. And that was how I made a pivot from my healthcare data entry role to being a school counselor. And during my time as a counselor, I loved my job. I worked in Colorado Springs back then. I remember loving it. I just love the mountains. I am notoriously not a morning person, but I would happily wake up at like 6 a.m. and drive to school because I loved seeing the view of the mountains. And I worked for a counselor for about a year and a half. And then I realized that I wanted to make more impact in my career. So what happened was the district that I worked in as a school counselor, my supervisor had never been a school counselor himself. And yet here he was supervising us. He didn't have any idea of our role or what it was that we had to do. I remember I had to partner with some counselors in other buildings to sort of build a coalition for ourselves so that we would advocate for the tools and the resources we needed and support one another. And it was just a very frustrating experience for me, which is what made me realize that I wanted to have more impact in my career. I remember thinking that I wanted more counselors to feel supported. I didn't want counselors to feel like they didn't know what they were doing or that they weren't trained properly for their role. And so that was how I started my journey to what I thought would be my second pivot. It wasn't, because my plan was, okay, I'm going to be a school counselor supervisor. And I wanted to go get a PhD so that I would learn more about training counselors and supervising them and supporting them. And then I would go back to the school districts to work as a school counselor. God is funny because that's not what happened. What ended up happening was I actually ended up pivoting from counseling to professor. I became a teacher that I didn't want to do because actually somewhere along that journey, I fell in love with teaching. And so I ended up pivoting from counseling to professor. And this was because I wanted to have more impact in my career. Like I said earlier, I wanted to support more counselors and help them in their career. And that brings me to the second lesson that I have learned, which is that you don't have to be miserable to make a career pivot. The only time I've been miserable when making a pivot was that very first one when I was unhappy in my healthcare data entry job. I didn't leave my role as a school counselor because I was miserable. I left because I wanted to have more impact. And to me, being a professor, supervising counselors, training counselors gave me the avenue to have more impact. So that's what I want to invite you to think about. Are you maybe right now in a job that is good enough, right? Like it works, you're doing it, you don't love it, you're not excited about it, you're not thriving, but it works. And in your head, because you're not downright miserable, then you think that you don't need to make a pivot, that you should just stick it out, see if things better, and just keep trying to make it work. Meanwhile, you're spending a lot of energy trying to make it work, so much so that you're tired a lot. You're drained, you're bored, your work doesn't feel exciting or engaging. You don't even feel like you're growing in your career anymore. But you're still staying because you think, oh, so many people have it so much worse. It's not really a toxic job, so I can stick it out. No, you don't have to be miserable to make a career pivot. Work is where you will spend most of your waking hours. In fact, the research shows that over your adult lifetime, if you work a minimum of 40 hours a week, you will work 90,000 hours over your adult lifetime. 90,000 hours. To me, it makes zero sense to be unhappy for that much of your life or to even just coast for that much of your life. It does not make sense for you to try to stick it out in the place where you spend most of your time while you are awake. So if you have been staying in that job because you think, oh, it's not as bad, it could be worse, I want to invite you to rethink that story that you're telling yourself. You don't have to be downright miserable to make a pivot. You could simply just want more for yourself, more impact, more fulfillment, more joy, and more money. And those are all very valid reasons for you to make a career pivot. So those are the first two lessons from the first two pivots. When I went from healthcare data entry to being a counselor, I had to stop being loyal to an old version of myself to start thriving in my career. And then when I went from counseling to being a professor, I had to recognize that I didn't have to be miserable to make a pivot. And now the third major pivot that I've done in my career, I'm currently going through it, is where I'm going from being a professor to a business owner and career coach full time. And this journey or this pivot is happening because I'm in a different season of life where I need more freedom, more flexibility, and I'm prioritizing some more personal goals and decisions and that require me to be working as an entrepreneur to reach those goals. And mind you, the second lesson I shared applies to this pivot where I didn't leave being a professor because I was miserable. I love my job. Till today, I still do some research activities with my coworkers. I really enjoyed what I did, but I just had different goals. And one thing I'm learning from this pivot is that clarity does not come from reflection. Clarity comes from action. You might be watching this video right now, sitting at home, feeling unhappy in your career, and you're thinking to yourself that you're just trying to figure out your next move and get clear on it, right? You're journaling, you're researching, you're talking to people, asking them what they think you should do in your career. Meanwhile, that's not how it works. You have to be in action to get clarity about if your moves were right or not. When I look back at all my pivots, even this one that I'm doing right now, I didn't know for a fact that any of them were right until after I made them. I just knew that something wasn't working in my career, so I had to make a move. And then in the midst of that move, it was like, oh yeah, I made the right move. This works. I'm thriving. I'm fulfilled. I'm getting paid more. I'm growing in my career. And so even as I'm making this pivot into being a business owner, I've been doing it full time for we're in May, 5 months now. And I'm still figuring out how I want this phase of my life to look. And I didn't know when I made this pivot that it was the right one. But as I'm going day by day, month by month, I'm feeling more settled in this new phase of my career. I'm like, oh, okay, this feels good. This works. It makes sense. Does that mean that I don't feel any fear? Nope. The fear is most definitely still still there. And each day I have to coach myself through it, talk myself through it, and keep moving forward. So that is the third lesson I want to leave you with, is that stop waiting to magically get clear about if this move is right or not. Sometimes you have to just make the move, and then you look back and you have clarity and say, okay, yeah, that was the right move for me to make. You already have enough data to make a move, meaning you're unhappy right now. Something is not working in your career right now. You would not be watching this video if you loved your career. The fact that you saw me talking about pivots and you clicked this video means you have been thinking about making a pivot for a little while now. That is all the data you need to decide if you should make a move or not. So at this point, it's time to stop asking, should I stay or should I go? Really, it should be, I'm going. What is my first move out? That is the question you need to be asking yourself. And if you've already been asking yourself and you feel like you don't know what that first move is, which is making you feel stuck in that job that you hate, then I want to invite you to have a conversation with me. I mentioned earlier that I'm a career coach who specializes in helping women clarify their next moves. If you click in the description below, you'll see a link to book a free career clarity call with me. On that free call, we'll talk more about what's happening in your career, why you're feeling stuck and unhappy, and I'll share how I can help you clarify your next move and land a higher paying, more fulfilling job. That URL is hercareerdoctor.com/call, CALL. And again, you can click it in the description below if you want to have a conversation and see how we can work together to help you pivot into a more fulfilling career. So there you have it. 3 lessons from making 3 career pivots in the past 12 years. Stop being loyal to an old version of yourself. You don't have to be miserable to make a career pivot, and clarity comes from action, not reflection. I hope that you can take those lessons and apply them to your own next step as you pivot into finding a more fulfilling career. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to click the like and subscribe buttons below. Subscribing means that you never miss future videos that will help you on your own career journey, and liking lets YouTube know that this video is worth sharing with more people. Thanks for watching, and once you hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons below, don't click away, because watch this. There is another video popping up on the screen right here. Go ahead and click that video, tap that video, because I bet you haven't watched that video yet, so I can continue supporting you in your career.